Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January Commission open meeting, the January meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Before we get started, I do have one announcement because I've got my family who's here with me today for the last meeting for me here as chairman. So let me introduce Luke. You want to stand up and say hi to everybody? Can you say hi? Can you wave hi? Yay. And then my wife Kathy and Will, and so they all came for the meeting this morning. And they've already been wanting to talk on the microphones, so I'm sure that'll happen before the time is over. That we'll all hear from them. If unless any of the other commissioners have any announcements, Madam Secretary, if you could give us our agenda for today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, and good morning, commissioners. Today's agenda consists of 3 panel presentations by senior commission officials regarding implementation of the commission's strategic plan. The first panel will feature the Chief of the Wireline Competition Bureau and Dr. Thomas Nesbitt, Executive Associate Dean of the School of Medicine and Director of the Center for Health and Technology at the University of California, Davis. The second panel will feature the Chiefs of the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Chief of the Office of Engineering and Technology, and the Chief of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. The third panel will feature the Chiefs of the International Bureau, the Media Bureau, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and the Enforcement Bureau. This is your agenda for today.
Thank you, and if we can proceed with the first panel.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Dana Schaefer, Chief of the Wireline Competition Bureau, and I'm pleased to present the Bureau's report. Today, thanks to the work of this Commission over the past few years, we are in a world of increased convergence, a world quickly moving to an IP universe. In promoting this new world, the Commission has been focused on balancing 2 competing interests. 1, to encourage investment in communications infrastructure, and 2, to make sure consumers and innovation are not disadvantaged by the owners of that infrastructure. Broadband deployment has been a top priority of the Commission over the past 4 years. The Commission has reduced regulatory uncertainty and removed legacy regulatory obstacles that discourage investment and slow deployment. For example, in August 2005, the Commission substantially reduced regulation of wireline broadband internet access and subsequently classified broadband over power line and wireless broadband internet access services as information services. In addition, the Commission largely removed wholesale unbundling requirements on new fiber investment by ILECs and forbore from enforcing legacy requirements on certain broadband enterprise services. The Commission also streamlined the state and local franchise process for new entrants and banned exclusive contracts in apartment buildings. The Commission's actions and the resulting increase in broadband investment by companies have contributed significantly to the rapid increase in broadband subscribership. Since 2000, the number of high-speed lines has increased more than 1,600%, from approximately 6.8 million lines in December 2000 to over 121 million lines in December 2007. The number of broadband lines providing higher transmission speeds also has been increasing. From December 2005 to December 2007, the number of lines with transmission speeds greater than or equal to 2.5 megabits per second grew by 70%, from approximately 27 million lines to over 45 million lines. At the same time, the number of fiber lines have more than doubled from 2005 to 2006, and nearly doubled again from 2006 to 2007. In 2000, almost 80% of the nation's geographic zip codes had 3 or fewer high-speed providers, with no high-speed provider at all in almost 1/3 of all geographic zip codes. Contrast 2007, in which all but 62 of the nation's 30,152 geographic zip codes had at least one high-speed provider, and more than 50% of those zip codes had 7 or more high-speed providers. Since 2000, the price of DSL has decreased more than 50%. Since 2001, the average price of wireline broadband also has decreased more than 50%. And since 2001, available broadband speeds have increased, enabling consumers to purchase service that is more than 10 times faster than what was offered back in 2001 for the same price. In a sweeping change, the Commission will now collect much more detailed information on broadband service subscription and deployment, requiring carriers to report the number of subscribers broken down by a greater number of speed tiers and by census tract. These changes will allow the Commission to better understand broadband deployment and adoption, examine the demographic and economic factors affecting broadband adoption, and identify underserved and unserved areas. The Commission has been vigilant in protecting consumers from harm while ensuring they have the necessary tools to make informed decisions. For example, in 2005, the Commission adopted a set of Internet principles protecting users' right to access lawful Internet content and to use the applications of their choice. The Commission subsequently enforced those principles in the Comcast order. The Commission also strengthened its rules governing the disclosure of consumer telephone records and acted to protect consumers who make relatively few interstate long-distance calls. As you can see from the slide, the Commission was also active in promoting facilities-based competition. For example, the Commission extended the benefits of competition to consumers by prohibiting contracts granting carriers exclusive service rights in apartment buildings and by enabling competitive broadband providers to serve consumers in those buildings using existing inside wiring. And in 2007, the Commission made it easier for customers to take their telephone number with them when they switched to a new telephone service provider, aiding consumers' ability to choose among competing carriers. During the past 4 years, the Commission has advanced the goals of expanding access to communication services to all Americans and put the Commission on a path towards strengthening and modernizing universal service programs while implementing safeguards to ensure that these programs continue to operate as Congress intended. The Commission adopted a pilot program to facilitate broadband deployment to rural health care providers and selected 69 participants from 42 states and 3 U.S. territories. When these projects are completed, the National Healthcare Network will look like this, connecting more than 6,000 healthcare providers across the country. E-rate funding has enabled schools and libraries to dramatically increase their access to broadband services. A 2007 study found that nearly 100% of public schools in the United States had internet access, 97% of which had broadband internet access. During the past 4 years, the Commission has made significant progress in implementing its statutory charge to make communication services available to all Americans, including those living in rural and high-cost areas. To address the explosive growth of the Universal Service Fund, largely caused by the increasing number of competitive ETCs, the Commission imposed an interim cap on the amount of high-cost support available to these CETCs and expanded the contribution base to include interconnected VoIP providers. In addition to stabilizing the Universal Service Fund, the Commission recently provided a framework for fundamental reform with a notice of proposed rulemaking seeking comment on comprehensive reform measures that would address some of the most important and most vexing problems that the Commission faces: universal service and intercarrier compensation reform. Currently, carriers charge vastly different rates for traffic based on archaic regulatory distinctions. Under the proposal, intercarrier compensation rates would be transitioned to a regime where traffic is exchanged at the same rate, regardless of the technology used. In the past 4 years, the Commission has produced meaningful results for consumers. We have put in place a regulatory framework to spur investment and to deliver choice and innovations to consumers, taken bold steps to protect consumers where necessary, and laid the groundwork for moving forward to a digital world. I'm joined at the table today by Julie Veach, and I wanted to wait until the end of the report to thank not only Julie, but the entire Bureau for all of their hard work. We have enjoyed so much working on the Commission's initiatives. We look forward to the year ahead, and that concludes my report.
Well, thank you, Dana, and thank you, Julie, and certainly all of the people in the Bureau for all of their hard work this past year and over the last few years and everything that they've been able to achieve. One of the things that I think that we haven't fully appreciated is the actual impact that the rural healthcare program is going to ultimately have. As Dana said, it's going to ultimately be connecting 6,000 rural healthcare clinics around the country, but even more important is potentially understanding what the impact that's going to have for real people. When we were at the out in California recently for the 706 conference that former Commissioner Chong had helped organize, I got to meet Dr. Nesbitt and the folks out there to talk about some of the program, what they've been able to do with telemedicine out there. So I asked him to come and actually make a presentation today. So thank you for being with us today, and appreciate you taking the time and effort to be here.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chairman Martin and Commissioners, for allowing me to come and talk about the Rural Healthcare Pilot Program and how it's being implemented in California and what we believe the impact is going to be. There's been a lot of discussion about healthcare reform. A lot of that's focused on the uninsured, but I think more and more people are beginning to talk about access to quality health care. And this is all occurring against a backdrop of an explosion in new medical science, where we're actually creating new science which really does make a difference in helping people get better. The problem is when some people have access to that science and other people don't have access to that, we actually grow the disparities. And I like to say that if we discover the cure for cancer, but only half the people have access to it, we really only discovered half the cure for cancer. Because medical science, no matter how good it is worthless if it's not applied appropriately to patients who need it. Advances in telecommunication technology and information technology can help redistribute knowledge and expertise to where and when it's needed and help overcome some of these disparities. But it's important that we not just apply this technology to a broken healthcare system and think magically it's going to work. I think the beauty of what's going on right now in telecommunications is that we have the ability with these technologies to facilitate new and more efficient models of healthcare across the economic and geographic spectrum. I think we can do things with these technologies that we couldn't do before, like just-in-time specialty consultation, which you're going to see an example of in just a minute. What I'm mainly talking about here is telemedicine, interactive healthcare over a distance using technology. Telemedicine can bring the expertise of a specialist to the point of need, to the point of care, and allow that expertise to be customized to the patient. And that's different than just moving information from one place to another. It's actually moving people's expertise that can interact with patients from one place to another. This is aided by medical peripherals, which we can do a fairly thorough exam on the other end. And I think you've had some of these demonstrated possibly at previous meetings. But although telemedicine has made a difference in some areas, it's not yet reached the levels that many people expected it to. And I believe that for telemedicine to reach the most remote and underserved areas, there must be larger scale networks, such as statewide networks, which will attract larger numbers of providers, of high-level service providers. But in order to create these statewide networks, it requires that we have widely distributed broadband connectivity, which is reliable, which has explicit quality of service, which has security and privacy. And that is why I think the Rural Healthcare Pilot Program is so important. And I do want to just take a minute here to just thank all of you for what you've done. And I particularly want to thank Chairman Martin for his leadership in this area, because I believe this is going to be the game changer in telemedicine. I think this is really going to be transformational in terms of not only telemedicine, but rural health care in general in this country. So I want to thank you and all the commissioners for your work on this, because it really is going to make a huge difference. I want to talk briefly about how this is going in California. We believe it's going to make a huge difference in our state. What we decided through the governor's office is that we wanted to do one proposal out of the state of California, even though it's a large state. And the governor's office pulled together a group of providers, a group of key stakeholders, and a group of interested people who wanted to participate in this. And we wrote one proposal. The University of California took the lead on this, and we are the formal applicant. And we really had four very simple goals in this. One was to create a statewide broadband network dedicated to healthcare with explicit quality of service, privacy, and security, to link California's telehealth network to national backbones, to leverage and build upon recent investments in telehealth in California. And you'll hear about one of those in a minute. We actually have a bond that passed to build buildings at the university to train the next generation of physicians to use technology, but also to buy equipment for rural sites for telemedicine. And finally, to utilize the California Telehealth Network for ongoing disaster preparedness and possibly response. We received an award up to $22.1 million, and we were fortunate in California to have the California Emerging Technology Fund provide $3.6 million. 3.3 of that is the 15% match, and $300,000 for startup. Now, our original goal was to do about 320 sites, and the letter of agency process, which allows us to apply for funds on behalf of healthcare providers, was a process that we weren't sure how it was going to work or whether or not we would get that many people that wanted to participate. We received letters of agency for nearly 1,000 locations in the state that wanted to participate in this network. And USAC has already qualified over 730 sites. Our RFP has been posted on the USAC website, and I want to take a minute here to talk a little bit about USAC because they have been remarkable in this process. Bill England and Daniel Johnson and the team, as well as the coaches and the people here at the FCC, have really taken a very new and difficult program and made it very easy and understandable for those of us who are trying to implement it on the ground. So I want to thank them for this. These are slides provided by USAC that shows the original program, and each one of these dots represents either one or more sites. And this was what the map looked like in 2001, and in 2004, and in 2007. But as you can see, when we implement the rural pilot program, it's a massive expansion of the number of sites that will have access to telemedicine. Finally, this is more than just about expanding the number of sites. The current state of our telecommunications and telemedicine in California is really a patchwork of different types of telecommunication. We still have some dial-up ISDN. We have a number of T1s that are really point-to-point connections. But with the new architecture and the new technology that we'll be using in this network with dynamic routing, this is going to be an anywhere-to-anywhere network. So anybody on this network can reach anybody else. And as we develop the other sites, you can see that the map begins to look very impressive. So finally, this is not just about numbers, though. This is about the impact on people. And what I want to show you today is about a 7-minute video to show you what the impact of this will be on real people.
Hi, Rob. My name's Cassandra. I'll be your nurse this afternoon.
Cassandra Kilmer has been a nurse at this small rural hospital in Willits, California for 5 years. On a windy, cold day in December, her 10-year-old son, Ian, unexpectedly fell off the living room sofa in their mountaintop house. Her older son, Travis, carried Ian to the car, and the three of them drove to the Frank R. Howard Memorial Hospital, 20 miles away.
I was definitely scared when we tried to get him to respond to us, and he wouldn't. He just stared at us. He wouldn't say anything. He couldn't move on his own.
As they sped down the mountain, Cassandra's mind was racing through possibilities of what could be wrong with her son.
When Cassandra arrived here at the Willits Hospital Emergency Center, her son Ian was unresponsive. The emergency room doctors immediately went to work to try to save this boy's life.
He was comatose. He was hyperventilating, breathing very hard. He was deathly pale. He was not responsive to anything, and one glance told me that there was a good chance this young man was going to die.
Barish immediately set up a strategy to figure out what was happening. In the meantime, the doctor was also dealing with another critical emergency case in the adjacent bed.
He was beginning to feel overwhelmed.
It took about 20 minutes before I decided that he was in a diabetic coma. At first, it looked very much like meningitis, like meningococcal meningitis. And when I first laid eyes on him, I have had cases like that before that go downhill very quickly with kids, and they do die.
Dr. Angus Matheson, the Kilmer family doctor, just happened to be in the hospital and was quickly pressed into service. The two docs knew time was running out. They needed expert advice fast, and they needed it 107 miles away at the University of California, Davis Medical Center. Barish and Matheson quickly dialed up their portable terminal that connected to the pediatric critical care unit in Sacramento. At the other end of that call were two of the best pediatric intensive care specialists in California, Karush Parsapur and Jim Marzin. Within seconds after the video and audio link was established, the four doctors worked together to save Ian's life.
Dr. Marson, I have a 10-year-old here whose IV has infiltrated. As you know, he has diabetic ketoacidosis. And I have a call into Dr. Dawson, who will be here in about 10 minutes, and he can put in a cut down.
All right, well, I think with his mental status, we should really move forward to either a central line or an IO. We don't really have 10 minutes.
Dr. Barish, when you were talking to the doctors at the medical center, you told them that you had contacted an emergency doctor, a surgeon, who was coming to help you with Ian, but they told you you didn't have 10 minutes. How did you feel at that point?
That was very frightening because I realized he was right. I knew he was right. I wanted to get a line in. I was just telling myself that Dr. Dawson, the surgeon, would be here. He could be here in 10 minutes and that would be enough. And they reinforced what I already knew, which is what he needed a line. What I'm generally putting in with adults is what's called a subclavian catheter, which goes up under the clavicle. The danger of that is that you can hit the lung. And when he's already fighting for his life, that would be much worse than not giving him the fluids.
Those who go into a diabetic coma are dehydrated and need fluids. Veins that are normally used for IVs collapse and become impenetrable. So Dr. Barish needed to access the femoral vein near the groin, something he had not attempted in 20 years.
I think, maybe, can we put in a femoral line then with him?
Well, I could try. I haven't done it in about 20 years.
I can talk you through it. If you've done a subclavian, it's just a couple pointers and we can go ahead and get that in, but we really should do this as soon as possible.
Okay, I have the artery and I'm just medial to the artery, and we're touching the IV.
Very good.
And it seems to be working fine.
Great. Perfect job. Good shot.
A sigh of relief came as Ian began to get life-saving fluid. After his vital signs were restored, he was immediately transferred to the pediatric intensive care unit at the UC Davis Hospital by ground ambulance, since the bad weather grounded helicopter transport. Once at the hospital, his insulin levels were regulated. Ian had just suffered a diabetic coma. He had no symptoms and no previous diabetic condition.
We were quite concerned with Ian's condition because he had diabetic ketoacidosis, or the diabetes, out of control. And there's a certain population of those children that are at risk of getting brain swelling. And from this brain swelling, nearly a third of the patients die.
Marzin says that there's a lot of data that suggests that people who live in rural communities don't have the same access to specialists as those living in large metropolitan areas.
Telemedicine gets rid of this distance barrier for them, and so they have access to the specialists that they need, and the goal is to raise the healthcare markers for the people living in rural communities.
Dr. Tom Nesbitt has focused much of his work on tackling geographic disparities in rural health. He says telemedicine is used every day, largely because there is a shortage of rural doctors.
One of the reasons that physicians leave rural areas is that they feel not supported and vulnerable. And so if we can provide them specialty consultation, we can provide them with continuing medical education, that supports those doctors staying in communities.
Voters last November approved State Proposition 1D, which will provide $200 million to the University of California to expand medical education using new technologies.
Telemedicine and telehealth is an idea whose time has come. UC Davis, for example, has been very active in this area for a long time, but now there's so much more interest in the infrastructure, trying to make broadband generally available, trying to spread it throughout the state.
Last fall, Governor Schwarzenegger attended a UC Davis pediatric telehealth conference where he announced the signing of an executive order to improve broadband connectivity in the state. Nesbitt says that visit was pivotal.
I think what it shows is not only that telemedicine has really become accepted, but it also shows that the state, through the governor, has a vision of a digital highway that includes health care, and that health care is no longer limited by your geographic location, that hopefully, eventually, anybody, anywhere in this state will have access to the best quality medical experts.
Why? Why?
On that cold winter day in Willits, Cassandra Kilmer's life changed forever.
We've definitely learned over the last couple of years that life is precious, and you never know when it's going to end, and we have to enjoy the time that we have together and make the most of it. We'll be fine.
Reporting from Willits, I'm Paul Fotenauer.
So on behalf of the people of California and patients like Ian, I want to again thank the Commission for your work on this pilot program. I really do think it's going to make a tremendous difference. Thank you.
If I may speak out of turn. We do have members of the rural healthcare team, Tom Buckley and his team, who have worked closely in this commission and with USAC, and I would like to take a moment to ask those guys to stand up and to thank them for all their hard work on this project.
Well, thank you, Dana, and all the staff in the Bureau for working on it. And Dr. Nesbitt, thank you actually for coming and repeating the presentation that you had made before. I think that has been critical for people to understand the real impact of what we're going to be trying to do. And you can see just what a difference it will end up making, and certainly in the state of California to real people, but also in the state of California, just how many people we're going to be able to connect when you look at that the chart that you had there. Commissioner Copps, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you both for your presentations, interesting and compelling. And first of all, I want to thank Dana and all the Bureau staff who have worked so hard on some of the most complicated issues that this commission faces. I'm particularly pleased that the Commission seems to be making strides now towards obtaining better broadband data and promoting advanced communications in healthcare. I'll say more about that in just a second. And other initiatives such as establishing the 10-digit phone numbers for the deaf and hard of hearing. As will be no surprise to you, I still think we have a long way to go to become fully competitive in broadband penetration, but I'm hoping we can take this new data that we're now collecting and really get an accurate view of the lay of the land and a better appreciation of what exactly needs to be done and where it needs to be done, so that we can move forward in concert with new leadership in Washington to try to develop a national broadband strategy that will really realize the objectives that we need to realize. I think there are going to be exciting times ahead. Dr. Nesbitt really gives us a feel for the importance of this stuff, and you talk about how transformational it is, and it's transformational in every way. It's transformational to health care. It's transformational to how we educate ourselves. It's transformational to opening the doors of economic opportunity into all aspects of our lives. And it goes back to what I've been saying about this is the central infrastructure challenge that we face in these opening years of the 21st century. It's the big national challenge to get this stuff out, because hinging on our success is our health and our well-being, and we've got to be doing a better job than we have been as a country. And I'm hopeful that you cite the strides in California. I think we've got a leadership coming to Washington now that understands the necessity to have this kind of infrastructure priority and a strategy to address it. So thank you very much. That was a compelling documentary. Let me just ask you one question. You're obviously making tremendous strides in California in this program. We've got 68 other pilot program networks, I guess, around the country. To what extent are you communicating with the other folks in the other projects so everybody doesn't have to invent the wheel from day one on, and really trying to synergize off of one another's efforts?
Well, we communicate on a regular basis on the conference calls that we have that are organized by USAC. But we've also had a number of discussions about making sure that we're able to link together essentially and create networks of networks, because this could be particularly important for disaster preparedness and disaster response, so that regions can work together, but also so we can bring the expertise. If such an emergency did occur, we could bring expertise from other networks outside the state and vice versa. So we are definitely thinking about that, and USAC has contemplated that as well.
Well, thanks for that, and we look forward to being kept apprised of the progress on all of these projects as they go ahead, and then taking what we learned and really coming up with a national program there. And I want to commend the chairman on his leadership and in getting this program going and supporting it. And I think it's one of the signal accomplishments of the commission in recent years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Combs. Commissioner Alstein?
Well, thank you. First, thanks to our guest, Dr. Nesbitt, for this really informative update. I thought it was wonderful to see in action the success of this program and some of the impact that it can have. I was very supportive of the effort to try to get this program underway, and I want to commend the chairman for his leadership in making sure that we did this. It really shows that when the chairman decides to take something on, the ability to make a difference in this country is very profound, and nothing is more profound, of course, than impacting the health care of the American people, particularly in rural areas where we need to equalize and bring access to specialty care to those who are living in the more remote parts of the country, and to try to bring everybody together to ensure that all of our communities have access to the best possible networks. I spent some time in California, went to school out there, and I know how urban it can get and how rural it can get. So you have both the best of healthcare and some of the most remote areas where you don't have access to that. To bring that together is really something that California Telehealth Network is delivering on, and I appreciate all that you're doing. I hope that we can build upon the success in the future, of course, working with our colleagues at HHS, but HHS can't do it alone. The basic business every day that we do at the FCC makes it possible to have applications like this, and education, and reduced use of energy because of telecommuting, and the list goes on in terms of our economy and productivity. Probably there's nothing more profound than the healthcare application in terms of how it can help save people's lives and prevent disabilities and help address urgent healthcare needs. But across the whole gamut of applications, WCB has its hands full, and certainly did a lot of hard work this year in trying to address these big issues. Certainly, this particular presentation underscores the need for, as Commissioner Kopp said, very robust broadband networks nationwide. And I think we made some steps this year on a number of important issues to move in that direction. I've always said the basis for a broadband agenda would be better data collection. We made some progress this year on that. We saw some of the early evidence of improvements in the data that was presented today based on some of the research we're doing. We managed to address network discrimination, implementing Congress's Net 911 Act, enhancing communications for the deaf and hard of hearing, and so many things that we did. We've got lots more to do to meet the broadband challenge, reforming intercarrier comp and preserving and advancing universal service and promoting innovation. And why I hope we made a little bit, would have hoped we would have made a little bit more progress on these fronts. I certainly want to thank the dedicated staff of your Bureau for all of the work they did to do so much this year, often late into the night, and oftentimes right up until deadlines, and even after them sometimes. So thank you. You have a great staff of dedicated professionals that are unequaled in government, and I'm glad we were able to continue to rely on your expertise this year. So thank you for all of your efforts, and thank you, Dr. Nesbitt, for making the trip out here to underscore this critical application.
Thank you, Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, many thanks to the entire Wireline Bureau for all the hard work. Just to echo the kudos from my colleagues. Long hours, complicated issues, sausage making at times, but you all are very, very committed, and we do appreciate that, and don't say that often enough, that you really are the unsung heroes here at the Commission. So we want to thank you, and thank you for this report. And I think this report, shows a lot of things, and I won't dwell on it because I know we have a lot of other reports to look at, but certainly the advancements in broadband and the rural health care pilot program is actually part of that. It's all part of that. There was a time when the growth rates in broadband were only about 20% a year, then they inched up into the 30% and then the 40% and then jumped to 60% growth rate per year. Pipes are getting fatter and faster and cheaper for consumers, and that's a very positive and constructive trend that we've seen here in the past 8 years in particular. And I think folks need to take note of that. Certainly there's more to be done. We need to keep pushing ourselves and explore innovative new ways to continue to get fatter, faster, and cheaper pipes in the hands of American consumers. But we should just take a moment to reflect and recognize the progress that has been made, and I think it's been something to be proud of. So thank you all very much. And Dr. Nesbitt, thank you so much for that presentation and making the long trip out here. And I'm delighted to see what we vote on up here and then move on to other issues that actually what we do makes a difference to quite literally save lives and affects real people in the most basic of ways. So thank you so much for summarizing all that, and I certainly learned a lot from the presentations today. And back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Commissioner McDowell, and again, thank you, Dr. Nesbitt, for making the trip and for all of your efforts in general, and for continuing to work with us and helping us work with other states to make sure that we're able to have the same kind of connectivity. And once again, thanks to the Bureau for all their work this past year and over the recent years in trying to help us achieve a greater broadband connectivity. And I think that we have made a lot of progress removing a lot of the legacy regulations, creating a level playing field, and allowing people to invest in. And as Commissioner McDowell said today, people are able to buy more for less, and that we certainly increased connectivity dramatically over the last few years. So thanks for all of your efforts. Thank you. And Madam Secretary, if you could announce our next panel.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the second panel will feature the chiefs of the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Office of Engineering and Technology, and the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau.
Jim, were you or Julie going to go first? Jim, okay, if you can proceed for us.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm very pleased this morning to be able to take a step back from the hurly-burly of the day-to-day work of the Wireless Bureau. We perhaps too often lose sight of the big picture, which includes a large number of extremely positive trends in wireless. So let's start first with an overview slide recounting a number of trends in the provision of wireless service. First off, between 2005 and 2008, 68 million more consumers signed up for mobile service, an increase of 35%. At the end of 2008, the number of subscribers represented 85% of the U.S. population. Next, consumers also used their phones more. In mid-2008, the average consumer spent 12.5 hours on the phone each month. Third, you'll also see huge increases in consumer use of mobile data services, whether it be text messages, which risen more than 950%, or photo and video messages, which have risen more than 1,800%. Yet, at the same time, the per minute price has fallen 19%, now to 6.5 cents per minute. Let's next drill down a bit on some of these numbers. For instance, in 2000, there were 97 million mobile phone subscribers. This chart reflects the growth over the following 8 years, 171% increase. Similarly, in 2000, the price was more than 20 cents per minute. By 2008, that had fallen 68% to that 6.5 cents per minute. The next slide indicates that the build-out of mobile telephone networks has been extensive and that the majority of consumers can choose among several different providers. As measured by census block, 99.6% of the U.S. population is covered by at least one mobile network, and more than 95% can choose among at least 3 competing operators. This next slide places the U.S. wireless experience in the context of overseas markets. I mean, what do we see? As compared with these overseas markets, U.S. consumers use their mobile phones significantly more while paying significantly less per minute. Turning to innovation through open tech, the use of mobile messaging services has also shown accelerating growth over the past 4 years. The number of text or SMS messages have risen from 57 to 601 billion. The number of photo and video messaging has increased from 285 million to over 5.5 billion over the course of these years. Now, until very recently, many wireless operators operated exclusively closed networks, limiting subscriber choice. In July 2007, the Commission adopted an open platform rule for 1/3 of the prime 700 megahertz band spectrum auctioned early last year. Today, the landscape is rapidly changing. Consumers are gaining greater freedom to choose their own wireless devices and software. For instance, late last year, T-Mobile unveiled the first Android device, and Apple's App Store now allows consumers to choose among new and innovative applications on the iPhone and AT&T's network. With regard to this slide shows the dramatic increase over the last 4 years in the amount of spectrum available for mobile wireless broadband services. Since 2005, the Commission has auctioned licenses in the 700 megahertz band, so we now have 70 megahertz of that spectrum available for provision of commercial service. We've auctioned and licensed 90 megahertz of AWS-1 spectrum, and we finalized the BRS-EBS rule changes providing for a transition to a band plan at 2.5 gigahertz that enables the offering of mobile wireless broadband services. That transition is now complete in areas covering 86% of the U.S. population. In short, the amount of spectrum now available for mobile broadband services has increased tremendously since 2005. In much of the country, consumers have the choice of only 2 broadband services, cable or DSL/fiber. One wireless opportunity for alternative broadband providers is found at 6.5 gigahertz as a result of our wireless BRS-EBS band plan. In addition, as this slide points out, in the recent 700 megahertz auction, bidders other than the incumbent DSL or cable provider won 700 megahertz spectrum in nearly every area of the country. The 700 megahertz auction itself was the largest auction in FCC history, raising a record $19 billion. The AWS-1 auction generated nearly $14 billion. All other auctions the FCC has conducted in the past 16 years have collectively produced a total of approximately $19 billion in actual receipts. Moving next to advancing broadband deployment, this slide identifies 4 significant actions the Commission has taken to facilitate the deployment of wireless broadband services to all Americans. First, it reclassified wireless broadband as an information service, putting it on the same regulatory footing as other broadband technologies. Second, it adopted aggressive build-out requirements in the all-important 700 megahertz band to promote service in rural areas. Third, it realigned spectrum band plans such as the 2.5 gigahertz band plan. And finally, wanted to inform you that we now have more than 600 nationwide licensees and more than 1,400 registered link under the Commission's hybrid 3650 megahertz licensing regime. Well, what has been the impact of these regulatory changes? The next few slides will illustrate the marketplace developments in mobile wireless broadband. In 2005, as this map shows, mobile wireless broadband networks reached about 25% of the U.S. consumers. And we transition now to the 2008 map. Mobile wireless networks have now reached 92% of U.S. consumers, reflecting a remarkable rollout over the past 4 years. Turning now to the mobile broadband devices in use, in mid-2005, there were only 400,000 mobile devices could access the internet at broadband speeds. 2 years later, this number had grown to more than 35 million and has been growing since then. In addition, while not on the chart, the percentage of mobile devices with web browsing capabilities have increased from 22% in 2005 all the way up to 75% in 2008. While I could go on, in conclusion, let me just say how privileged I feel to be able to represent the entire staff of the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau today in presenting this report to you. to work closely with a number of the other bureaus on a number of proceedings, whether dealing with other spectrum issues and the like, and also more generally to serve this commission. As hopefully has been demonstrated, the American consumer has found more and more value in wireless services in recent years, in no small part due to the accomplishments of this commission. I think we all share a desire for continued progress in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Julie?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm pleased to report on the accomplishments of the Office of Engineering and Technology under the leadership of Chairman Martin, and particularly over the last year. The Commission has taken a number of actions over the past few years to advance broadband deployments. The Commission adopted an order that ensured consumers would have access to Wi-Fi hotspots at airports. We continued to work with the wireless internet service providers who are deploying broadband services, particularly in rural areas, under our unlicensed rules. And we have developed rules to facilitate deployment of broadband over power line service. The Commission took a number of actions to open spectrum for new devices and services. We conducted a 2-year testing program and published 4 reports on potential use of TV white spaces. For the first time in the history of our laboratory, testing was open to the public. This past November, the Commission adopted new rules to allow unlicensed devices to operate in the TV white spaces. And last week, we announced a fellowship program to share what we have learned through this process around the globe. We also proposed new rules and granted waivers to enable introduction of new cutting-edge medical devices that use wireless technology to monitor and treat disease. We've been working to facilitate the relocation of the broadcast auxiliary service to make spectrum available for mobile satellite and advanced wireless services. And OET has also worked collaboratively with the other bureaus and offices on virtually every spectrum and technical proceeding that the Commission has addressed. OET worked together with the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau to develop the rules for an open technology platform for the 700 megahertz C-block licensee. As the Commission had hoped, this requirement has given focus to the benefits of open technology platforms, and the concept is gaining support in other frequency bands and services as well. OET participated in the first Open Mobile Summit this past November to promote the benefits of open technology platforms, which was attended by more than 300 people. Increasingly, devices are integrating licensed and unlicensed technologies that further promote the concept of open platforms. Wireless phones often include Wi-Fi, where consumers can get access to the internet at their homes and at thousands of hotspots around the country, and they're demanding similar ease of access when operating over the commercial wireless network. OET recommended and the Commission adopted changes to the rules that serve to facilitate open technology platforms, such as streamlined processes for certification of radio modules and provisions for software-defined radios. Last week, we attended the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. New product innovations seem to be blanketing the show floor. Since OET has responsibility for unlicensed devices, I wanted to take a minute to point out how some of the innovations on the show floor sprang from the rules and the policies that the Commission had adopted. Wireless USB was featured at the show and has data rates faster than 400 megabits per second. It's based on the ultra-wideband rules that the Commission adopted just a few years ago. Several areas were devoted to new power line carrier technologies such as HD PLC and HomePlug that provide for home networking and other applications. Another new technology displayed at the show is called Wireless HD. It operates under our unlicensed rules at 60 gigahertz and is intended to eliminate the wires between the TV and other video and audio programming equipment. There are also entire areas devoted to unlicensed technologies such as Zigbee and Z-Wave for home and business automation and control. And I could go on for quite a while, but suffice to say that innovation is alive and vibrant in the area of unlicensed devices. OET has taken a number of actions to support the DTV transition. Together with the Media Bureau, we developed the final table of DTV allotments. We performed the engineering analysis to support DTV coordination with Canada and Mexico, developed TV receiver tuner rules, and addressed waivers. addressed issues related to closed captioning and the V-chip, supported the Wilmington and Hawaii DTV transitions, and are participating in DTV outreach programs. We recently published 2 reports that collectively included more than 2,600 maps comparing analog and digital TV coverage. Our laboratory tested 135 DTV converter boxes in support of the NTIA coupon-eligible converter box program. Working with the Consumer and Government Affairs Bureau and the Media Bureau, we developed consumer guides on antennas and other issues, conducted a public workshop on DTV converter boxes, and published a feature list for most of the converter boxes that are on the market. This concludes my formal presentation, and I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the talented group of people in OET. None of these accomplishments would have been possible without their efforts. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all of the commissioners for your support of OET. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Chief Porsche?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm pleased to illustrate to you today how the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau has been effectively serving the American public and the public safety community. Our portfolio is unique in that it extends across multiple disciplines. I will address our efforts concerning access to 911 services, emergency alerts to consumers, emergency response, public safety spectrum management, priority communication services, and our clearinghouse activities. Under Chairman Martin's leadership, the Commission has made a priority of ensuring that consumers have access to 911 and enhanced 911 emergency services across various communications platforms, including providers of interconnected voice over Internet Protocol or VoIP services. This ensured that interconnected VoIP customers would be able to dial 911 and receive help. More recently, the Commission implemented the Net 911 Act to provide interconnected VoIP providers rights of access to network elements necessary in providing 911 and E911 service. The Commission has also sought to improve the accuracy of the location information transmitted to public safety answering points, or PSAPs, when consumers place 911 calls from their cellular phones, as well as to extend location information requirements to the VoIP 911 calls. In this regard, 3 of the largest wireless carriers have already committed to meet accuracy requirements on a county basis. In the past 3 years, the Commission has been proactive in both extending the reach of the emergency alert system to consumers and in laying a foundation for the rollout of next-generation EAS technology. Thus, in addition to ensuring that the public will continue to receive emergency alerts from traditional radio and television broadcasters, the Commission has also extended the EAS requirements to a variety of new communications platforms, such as over-the-air digital TV, satellite radio, satellite television, and cable television. The Commission required communications providers to use a common protocol for transmission of emergency alerts once a protocol is finally adopted by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The Commission also required communications providers to transmit state and local alerts so long as the Commission has reviewed and accepted the state's EAS plan. This will encourage states to adopt next-generation technologies for their EAS networks. Finally, to expand the scope of persons receiving EAS alerts, the Commission has encouraged stakeholders to provide for multilingual EAS alerts and to enable EAS to better reach persons with disabilities. Last year, the Commission successfully implemented the Warning, Alert, and Response Network Act, which required the Commission to take a number of steps to facilitate the voluntary transmission of emergency alerts by commercial mobile service providers to their subscribers. Based on recommendations from a diverse committee of stakeholders, the Commission adopted 3 orders establishing the Commercial Mobile Alert System, or CMAS, that will enable consumers to receive emergency alerts over their mobile handsets. With CMAS, consumers, including those with hearing and vision disabilities, will be able to receive timely presidential, imminent threat, and AMBER alerts over their mobile devices. To date, over 140 commercial wireless mobile carriers, including the major nationwide carriers, have elected to participate in whole or in part in CMAS. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, Chairman Martin proposed that a new bureau be formed to consolidate and better coordinate the FCC's public safety functions. On September 25, 2006, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau was formed to address public safety policy, outreach, licensing, emergency preparedness and response activities, and network reliability issues. It has been an honor to be the first chief of the Bureau for almost 2 years, and I'm very proud of all the employees who serve the Bureau and the Commission and who are dedicated to daily protecting the interest of the American public. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina created a communications crisis so widespread that the Commission operated on an unprecedented 24/7 basis to address communications outages and assist communications recovery efforts. The Commission received almost unanimous praise for its efforts and was cited in the White House Lessons Learned report for its quick actions to facilitate the resumption of communication services in the affected area and to authorize the use of temporary communication services for use by emergency personnel and evacuees in shelters. Since the 2005 hurricane season, the Commission has taken significant steps to develop improved procedures for responding to hurricanes and other disasters, and this has been a key focus of the Bureau. As a result of these efforts, we were able to vastly improve our response during the 2008 hurricane season. For example, FCC staff were assigned to the field to assist in communications restoration efforts for Tropical Storm Faye and Hurricanes Gustav and Ike. In addition, the FCC deployed a novel system called Project Roll Call for the first time during 2008. Roll Call uses spectrum analyzing equipment to analyze the spectrum environment before and after a storm to determine which systems are up and operating and which are not. This tool is particularly effective for broadcasters and public safety radio communications networks. Finally, since Katrina, we have developed the Disaster Information Reporting System, or DIRS, a voluntary reporting system that provides the federal government with daily situational information about communication systems during emergencies. DIRS was activated for the first time in 2008 and proved very useful to our federal partner agencies. The past 4 years has seen significant developments in the opening of the 700 megahertz band to public safety use. After Congress allocated 24 megahertz of spectrum in the band for public safety, the Commission designated 10 megahertz for broadband use to address public safety's demonstrated need for access to advanced wireless broadband technology. Absent alternatives to fund a nationwide public safety broadband network, the Commission acted to create a public-private partnership between a single nationwide public safety licensee and a commercial licensee partner that would be awarded an adjacent 700 megahertz spectrum block. Because an auction did not produce a winning commercial partner, the Commission has since issued 2 further notices seeking the best path to enable successful deployment of a nationwide, fully interoperable public safety broadband network. This proceeding remains an important priority for the next Commission. Over the past 3 years, the Commission has made significant progress in the 800 megahertz rebanding effort. Although the process has taken longer than originally anticipated, 97% of Channel 1 through 120 licensees and 33% of NIPSPAC and expansion band licensees in non-border areas have completed rebanding of their systems, and 82% of the NIPSPAC licensees have rebanding agreements with Sprint and Nextel. In October of last year, we initiated the rebanding process in the U.S.-Canada border area, and we have also made significant progress in international negotiations with Mexico to enable rebanding to proceed along the U.S.-Mexico border. Rebanding is now yielding new spectrum for licensing for public safety. The Bureau's licensing function serves a critical role in ensuring that public safety agencies will continue to have access to spectrum for their growing communications needs, both during routine public safety operations and in times of major emergencies. The Bureau currently administers over 150,000 public safety licenses in multiple spectrum bands. In the past 4 years, our licensing staff has processed a total of 173,476 public safety radio applications to keep pace with the request of state and local public safety entities across the country to expand or modify their spectrum use. The Commission has established 2 priority communications programs, Telecommunications Service Priority, or TSP, and Wireless Priority System, or WPS, that are designed to ensure that the public safety community has reliable access to public communication systems at all times, especially during disasters and emergencies. TSP helps ensure priority installation and restoration of telecommunication services, and WPS ensures priority access to wireless services. Bureau personnel have worked diligently over the past 4 years to increase enrollment by 911 call centers, hospitals, and state and local emergency operations centers. As a result, enrollment in TSP has risen by 180%, and enrollment in WPS has risen by 220%. The Bureau's outreach program focuses on providing key information about public safety communications issues to consumers in the public safety community. Since 2006, the Bureau has hosted quarterly summits on public safety topics and initiated a speaker series to bring public safety communications experts from other government agencies to the FCC. The Bureau's website serves as a core for our outreach efforts. In August of 2007, the Bureau created a clearinghouse on its website to collect, evaluate, and disseminate the most current communications information for the public safety community. The clearinghouse includes such topics as best practices, communications and interoperability plans, and emergency guidelines. The clearinghouse also provides links to other federal, state, and local government resources. Today, there are more than 230 useful telecommunications and communications documents in the clearinghouse. The importance of the website to the Bureau's outreach efforts is highlighted by the heavy usage it has received. Since its creation, the clearinghouse has had over 96,000 hits from users. Overall, our website has had over 2 million hits since its creation. In conclusion, since inception of the Bureau, we have worked every day to carry out the Commission's public safety and homeland security priorities. I appreciate the support we have received from each of you, as well as our colleagues in the other bureaus and offices. I especially want to thank the hardworking, dedicated employees of the Public Safety and Homeland and Security Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Jim and Julie. Too. Appreciate the work that you all have done and everyone in the Bureau. I'll have some more comments, but Commissioner Cobbs.
Well, thanks the three chiefs for the presentations here. I appreciate that. Dr. Nesbitt talked about the transformative nature of broadband, certainly the transformative nature of wireless communication since I arrived here about seven and a half years ago has just been tremendously impressive. A lot has been accomplished. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that these networks are truly open, that they are fully consumer friendly, and that they are encouraging of competition. But I think it's quite a dramatic story. So we thank the Wireless Bureau for all of its work. Without OET, I'm not sure there would be nearly as strong a case to even having a Federal Communications Commission as there is. Our policymaking relies on the expertise of our engineers, the technical and engineering expertise of your office, to make sure that when these new technologies come along that we really can understand them and the implications and the consequences intended and unintended. And this year you had some particularly difficult calls to make, and we waited with bated breath for those, but we rely on them hugely and will continue to, and I wish we had more of you to go around, really. So thanks very much to you and all of your capable team. And Chief Port, certainly the top priority, as I've said many times, in public service is protecting the safety, safeguarding the people, public safety, and it's in that light that I'd like to thank you and your Bureau for your diligence and hard work. And I guess the best highlight of that work is that the Bureau is actually up and running and bringing all the differing components here at the Commission under one roof has been an important advance. And again, I know that's something that needs your constant care and nurturing and making sure that we're all communicating with one another as the Bureau is communicating with one another. And I know there's been a tremendous degree of cooperation and interaction among your bureaus, and that's exactly what we like to see. So I thank you too. I was impressed. You're talking about the documents on the clearinghouse and the number of hits. Can you tell me to what extent, I know you get a lot of hits, but the clearinghouse also, you can actually reach a human being through the clearinghouse and talk to somebody in the Bureau or the various bureaus?
We have contacts within our website where you can log on and ask for information and key in, and someone will get the information and get back to you.
And is that getting used pretty well, and is word of that out?
Word of it is spreading, and it's being used somewhat. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, to the extent that we can help spread that word out, this is such important information to have, and there's no reason for all of these folks to have to start again at ground zero and invent from scratch. So we'll be trying to help get that information out too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cobbs. Commissioner Alston.
Well, thank you. As Jim's slideshow illustrated, it certainly was another momentous year in wireless. Incredible progress, really just at the threshold, though, of incredible growth and innovation to come. I think those charts showing massive growth are going to continue along those trend lines so long as we continue to advocate for openness and competition and innovation, coming up with approaches that allow the maximum best use and utilization of the spectrum as we've done in the past. So the wireless arena is a great success story for the FCC over the years. What we've accomplished just in the last year as a result of not only our work here, but many other factors, technological advances, consumer demand, which is overwhelming for wireless broadband devices. We need to continue to feed this system by having the lifeblood spectrum get into the hands of people that can use it to deliver services for these consumers that are increasingly demanding them. Especially young people are growing up. They don't see broadband anymore as something that's the computer in the home, but they see it as everywhere they go, and they expect it everywhere they go. And these systems are straining under the demands of all of these consumers that want wireless on the go. And we are trying to meet that every way we can. So as we move forward, I think that we need to continue to look critically at the construct of open access networks and to ensure that our policies across platforms truly reflect the most efficient and practical uses of the next generation communication systems. So thank you for all your hard work this year. I'm sure that never lets up at the Wireless Bureau, nor does it at OET, to say the least. What a year. Poor Julie, I don't know how you managed to keep your family together with all the demands. We appreciate it's your part of our family and your entire team of expert engineers that have done such a great job this year, and I know worked incredible hours because so much was thrown your way and came through with aplomb. We appreciate all that you've done. Certainly your presentation underscores the number of highly complex and difficult proceedings, white spaces, the AWS proceeding, spectrum allocation, and public safety spectrum uses. So thanks for all your continued efforts, and thanks for putting up with the strain. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier year coming, but it never does let up much. And Chief Porch, we appreciate your efforts as well. I know your whole team has put so much into public safety communications this year. We made some progress on 800 megahertz rebanding requirements. That requires the coordinated efforts of so many entities, and I appreciate the focus and dedication that you put into moving this process along, and your whole team did. Of course, the commercial mobile alert system, which is an elective system for the industry, is yet another effort that required the cooperation of those who use the system. So a sincere thanks to all of you, both inside and outside the Commission, who ensured that there are technologically neutral rules in place to enable CMS providers to elect to provide these critical alerts to their consumers. And we've got a lot more to do, of course, in particular building out the nationwide interoperable broadband public safety network that we've talked about for so long. I look forward to working with all of you to meeting these and other critical needs. And I might highlight one issue for the upcoming year we might want to think about, which we don't talk about a lot, but cybersecurity is something of great concern to mine. I think that we are constantly under siege in this country, and we don't realize how many threats there are that are coming at us from so many different directions. And our colleagues on Homeland Security and the State Department, NTIA, and DOD are working on this together. And of course, if they can rely on our expertise as we work toward a coordinated response, it's sort of it's a problem that's waiting to happen. I mean, we're really need to look at this as not only a national security issue, but an economic security issue, as our economic infrastructure could be targeted at any time. And hopefully we can lend our expertise to the other agencies that are working on this to ensure that we have a defense as strong as can be and responses that are readily available to us. So thank you for all your work on this year.
Thank you, Commissioner Alston. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, starting with wireless, Jim, it's been a very busy year. I think, what's one of the most exciting areas for me in wireless, I came from the wireline world, so it's been very, very exciting. But wireless technologies are really the ultimate technologies to promote freedom. And as we've seen throughout the world, it actually, not only are wireless technologies the products of liberal democracies, but they help to create and preserve liberal democracies throughout the world. And so, again, what we do on that front, you and all the great folks there in the Wireless Bureau, really literally touches the lives of every American. And I think it's important to point out how robustly competitive the wireless industry is. Your slide showed that over 90% of the population has access to 4 providers. I think it's still in the low 50s percent have access to 5 providers, and the average consumer therefore has access to 5 providers. And that's only going to get better and more competitive once AWS-1 and 700 megahertz and white spaces networks get built out. As your slide showed, there will be new blood in each market, and that's just going to shake things up even further. So I think it's important for us to remember that, again, sort of reflect here for a minute on all the accomplishments. And basically, the FCC has allowed, given the private sector the opportunity to innovate and to proliferate and to use the spectrum more efficiently. And that is really the net result of what's happened. And also, you mentioned that in many cases, American consumers have a better consumer experience with wireless than some of our overseas friends. I think that's important to note as well. And though, something that you need to note is the profitability of the FCC. If you figure our budget's normally about $315 million, if you don't include the 20 for DTV, and we brought in $20 billion, just last year roughly, and $14 billion the year before. That's a pretty darn good return on investment, and I still maintain we should have a public stock offering at some point, do an IPO, and because that's awfully darn good. But wireless broadband really is the future, as your slide showed. And Julie, many thanks for your patience with all these liberal arts majors up here. It's great to have your team to come up and tell us about the hard science and explain it all to us and help us make sure that science drives these decisions and nothing else. And as Jonathan said, it's been incredibly busy for you, for all of you, and we do appreciate the long hours, the late nights, and sometimes bleeding into the wee hours of the early morning. And you've done just a fantastic job, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on things. And then, of course, Chief Porch, terrific presentation there. I do note, however, the background still was in Carolina blue, and I admire your pride. I respect your pride in your school, but I think your presentation could show up better if you used Duke blue and had white lettering. That's just my helpful tip for the day. But anyway, as I've said all along, the creation of this bureau was a no-brainer. And when I was in the private sector, I remember working closely with the chairman's office, and Dan in particular. My ear was sort of glued to the phone in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, as you all very deftly, before the bureau was created, handled the recovery efforts there, and that of course sparked the creation of this bureau, so that the 2008 hurricane season was not the story of the 2005 hurricane season. And that is a direct result of the hard work of the Bureau and the consolidation and the coordination that occurred when that Bureau was created. So kudos to your staff and you for all of the hard work that you do and creating a new Bureau, and that's never easy, and we do appreciate the efforts and look forward to continuing to refine and improve and all the rest, but it's gotten off to a great start. So. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Commissioner McDowell, and again, Jim, Julie, and Derek, thank you all for your presentations, for the hard work, and really for the hard work of all you all staff. Jim, it has been a busy year for all of you all, but certainly it's been an exciting one as well, ushering in the first era really of wireless broadband services, and you can just see the dramatic growth that's occurred in the last few years, and certainly the participating in conducting the most successful auction that the Commission's ever had is going to really be a springboard for that for those wireless broadband services going forward. But even before then, you can see just the dramatic growth that we've continued to have in wireless, as wireless now more than eclipse all the wireline connections. And you're going to be able to continue to see the competition is going to continue to flourish there, so that you're going to see you get continued improvement in services and decreases in prices. And I think that what we've seen there has been just incredible, and I think we're going to see it on the broadband side as a result of all of your actions there. And and Julie, it has been very busy on a variety of issues, whether it was working incredibly hard on the white spaces testing and the AWS-3 testing and reports, both of those, the digital television analysis, for the market coverage. And actually, I think maybe most importantly was actually doing some of those in a more open and transparent way than the Bureau had been used to. I know when I first told you I wanted you to conduct the testing in public and allow anyone to come, you were very hesitant about being overwhelmed with people, but I think that it was actually critical for people to be able to see just what our engineers were doing and how they were approaching these issues. And in the end, it wasn't really any of those that work that was most important from the Commission's standpoint. It was really the trusted advice we got from the engineers that was most critical, and the ability to provide that in an unbiased way without any kind of an agenda that enables us to end up making the decisions based upon that advice. And Derek and Chief Porch, I want to thank you again personally for moving first of all up here from North Carolina when I asked you to, and for really doing an outstanding job setting up the Homeland Security Bureau, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. We've had a priority on public safety since I first became chairman, whether it was on 911 and making sure that consumers could pick up any phone and dial 911 and get access to the local police and local fire departments, and make sure that those local police and fire departments could find you when you dialed 911. And you've been instrumental in helping us achieve all of that. Implementing the WARN Act, the early emergency alert systems, the deftness that you put forth in trying to develop a plan to respond more effectively to hurricanes, and the whole Bureau's and all the staff's hard work in responding to Hurricane Katrina. We're all very successful and very critical and important. So we've appreciated you taking on all those significant challenges, and thank all of you all's hard work. With that, Madam Secretary, if you can announce our next panel.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the third and final panel today will be given by the chiefs of the International Bureau, the Media Bureau, the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and the Enforcement Bureau.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm very pleased to present this report on the International Bureau's efforts to further the Commission's strategic goals and overall strategic plan. I'm proud to report on the significant contribution that the International Bureau has made to the work of the Commission over the past 4 years. At this time, I also wish to express my deepest gratitude to the International Bureau staff. They have been the utmost dedicated public servants in advancing the Commission goals. Over the past 4 years, the men and women of the International Bureau have worked to facilitate and encourage development and innovation in broadband. Specifically, we assisted in issuing flexible rules for mobile satellite uses in fixed satellite service bands. We also worked to establish flexible service rules for the 1724 gigahertz band, which may bring a new generation of broadband services to the public. Moreover, we have taken other steps to provide consumers with access to advanced broadband and interactive satellite communication services through, for example, the licensing of several satellite operators in the Ka band. The International Bureau also has worked hard to promote broadband availability, investment, and innovation. Internationally, as you know, we've advocated the Commission's broadband policies in international organizations such as the OECD and in meetings with our counterparts. Satellite-based high-speed internet capacity since 2005 has also grown. As we can see from this graph, the number of satellite-based high-speed internet connections almost doubled from about 377,000 to almost 669,000 between June 2005 and June 2007. The International Bureau has been very pleased to play its part in supporting the Commission goal of extending broadband availability to all Americans. During the past 4 years, the International Bureau worked actively to promote access to telecommunication services and to increase consumer choice. We have rapidly processed hundreds of applications for new international telecom and satellite facilities and transactions. On the telecom side, we processed more than 1,100 Section 214 applications and over 800 transfer of control and assignment applications. On the satellite side, we processed more than 1,000 space station and Earth station applications combined, and more than 1,100 transfer of control and assignment applications. We also led the Commission's effort to produce the first and second reports to Congress on the state of competition in the satellite industry. Over the past 4 years, we have seen a dramatic increase in submarine cable capacity licensed annually, from 30 gigabits per second in 2005 to over 13 terabits per second in 2008. The increase in capacity will be instrumental in promoting competition in international communication services. The last 4 years also have been productive ones for the International Bureau's work in support of the Commission's goal of ensuring efficient and innovative use of spectrum. In this regard, the International Bureau prepared numerous Commission items. These include orders granting ancillary terrestrial component authority to certain MSS operators in accordance with our 2003 ATC rules, the 1724 gigahertz BSS report and order adopting licensing and technical rules for new satellite systems, and the Big LEO reconsideration order. Moreover, over the past 4 years, the International Bureau facilitated or completed a total of approximately 3,300 satellite coordination agreements to ensure interference-free satellite operations. And we acted rapidly on a combined total of more than 8,000 applications, including space and Earth station applications, to use satellite spectrum. The International Bureau also has continued to advocate U.S. interest internationally in regional and intergovernmental organizations and has represented the Commission in bilateral meetings with its foreign counterparts. An excellent example of the success of our outreach work is the 2007 World Radio Conference, where we provided expertise to Ambassador Richard Russell and the rest of the U.S. delegation. The International Bureau was instrumental in achieving major successes at this conference for the United States, including the identification of additional spectrum for international mobile telecommunications and the protection of wireless broadband services in the 2.5 gigahertz band from foreign satellite interference. In addition, the International Bureau, in coordination with the State Department, pushed successfully for the inclusion of WiMAX technology within the International Mobile Telecommunication family of standards, which will help foster competition among broadband technologies. We also have supported the Chairman's leadership in the global arena. For example, the International Bureau assisted the Chairman in preparation for the ITU Global Symposium of Regulators that was held in Thailand in March 2008 and was attended by regulators from more than 100 countries. Similarly, in June 2008, we supported the Chairman's leadership at the OECD Ministerial in Korea. Telecom ministers and regulators from all OECD countries and several other countries participated. The International Bureau has been engaged in coordination with our neighbors. In this regard, we have supported the Commission's public safety and homeland security strategic goals. In particular, we worked with counterparts to ensure interference-free public safety operations along the borders with Canada and Mexico. Those efforts included negotiations that we successfully concluded with Canada regarding public safety operations in the 800 megahertz frequency band. Lastly, the International Bureau has played an active role in promoting the digital TV transition for U.S. border communities. We succeeded in coordinating the U.S. DTV allotment plans with both Canada and Mexico and continue our work toward comprehensive long-term digital broadcasting agreements. We also facilitated information exchanges with policymakers from countries that have experienced digital TV transitions already. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the International Bureau has worked consistently to help the Commission meet its strategic goals over the past 4 years. We are grateful for the opportunity to play a part in the Commission's accomplishments and successes, and we have been very proud to be part of this agency's very good work. On a personal note, I want to extend a big thank you to all of the International Bureau staff. As you know, my start in telecom began years ago at the International Bureau as a staff person. It has been a source of great pride to serve at the helm of this Bureau and work with such truly wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Monica?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight the work of the Media Bureau over the last few years. Media touches almost every aspect of our lives, from informing us about important issues in our communities to how we are entertained. In the Media Bureau, we sought to benefit consumers by promoting competition and diversity of choice in markets. We also stepped in to protect consumers. With over 29,000 broadcast licensees and over 6,000 cable systems among our areas of responsibility, the workload has been significant. I would like to thank my staff of over 200 talented and hardworking engineers, lawyers, economists, analysts, and support personnel for their incredible contributions in handling the work before us. The Commission continues to be guided by the core principles embodied in the Communications Act that consumers benefit from the promotion of competition and diversity of choices. Increased competition results in better quality, more choices, greater innovation, and lower prices for consumers. Since Congress enacted the '96 Act, cable rates have risen every year, higher than the rate of inflation. Overall, the price of expanded basic service increased by 122%, from $22.35 to $49.65 from 1995 through the end of 2007. This compares with an increase in the Consumer Price Index of 38.4% over the same period. By contrast, the price for every other service the Commission regulates has decreased. For example, the average rate of wireless service has decreased more than 85%, average long-distance rates decreased by more than half, and the cost of international calls declined by more than 89%. Cable prices decrease substantially when a second wireline cable operator enters the market, and it does not appear that DBS effectively constrains cable prices. With this in mind, during the past few years, the Media Bureau has engaged in actions to promote competition for multi-channel video programming services. As telecommunications companies upgraded their networks to provide video services, they encountered roadblocks when they applied for franchises in competition with cable providers. The Commission took action to reduce barriers for competing providers and provided guidance to implement Section 621 of the Communications Act, which prohibits franchising authorities from unreasonably refusing to award competitive franchises. A number of the rules were also extended to incumbent providers. The use of exclusive contracts for providing video services to multiple dwelling units was banned because they impede multi-channel video competition. The prohibition on exclusive access to cable programming was extended to 2012 to preserve and protect competition and diversity in the distribution of video programming. The rules ban exclusive contracts between vertically integrated programmers and cable operators. The least access rules were reformed to foster the development of independent programming channels. The Commission limited the ability of a single cable operator from serving more than 30% of MVPD subscribers nationwide to prevent a cable operator from becoming so large that it could impede the flow of video programming to the consumer. Cable operators were ordered to stop integrating proprietary security elements into the set-top boxes they lease. As a result, consumers came closer to the day when they can buy their choice of box from any manufacturer that can work on any cable system. The complexities of the digital transition have been significant. Television broadcasters required a new digital television transmission standard, a new digital table of allotments, and new digital facilities. Measures were also required to ensure that consumers can receive digital broadcast signals just as they've been receiving analog broadcast signals, regardless of whether they obtain their broadcast programming over the air or from a paid service. Keeping these complexities in mind, it is impressive to note that on the technical side, as of December 31st, approximately 98% of stations have either completed construction or are well on their way to completion. This readiness is due in part to the Commission's timely completion of all of the required technical rulemakings, followed by vigorous monitoring of the progress of broadcaster build-out. The final DTV table of allotments provided virtually all full-powered television stations with their final channel assignments for broadcasting in digital. The third periodic review proceeding established deadlines for broadcaster construction of their final post-transition facilities. The Commission required all full-power stations to regularly report on the station's progress in meeting transition deadlines. In some cases, a signal may not reach all parts of its original analog service area. The Commission has taken steps to aid broadcasters by making rules more flexible to allow, for example, use of distributed transmission system technologies to preserve service in those areas, and a proposal to create a new replacement digital television translator service. A key component of the Commission's DTV policy has been to take action to minimize harms and maximize benefits to consumers from the transition. Some of the key steps taken include addressing the obligation of cable and satellite operators to carry local digital broadcast signals in order to avoid post-transition service disruptions. To ensure analog cable subscribers weren't shortchanged after the digital transition, under the Commission's viewability order, cable operators must make all must-carry local broadcast stations viewable by all cable subscribers. The Commission also adopted a television labeling requirement. Sellers must alert consumers if they are selling TV equipment with only an analog tuner to protect consumers from unknowingly buying televisions that won't receive broadcast stations after the transition. The Commission adopted rules requiring broadcasters, MVPDs, and others to convey information on the timing, logistics, and benefits of the transition. The Commission has moved swiftly to implement the analog nightlight program that will allow and encourage broadcasters to provide emergency and transition information to viewers who are unprepared for the transition for up to 30 days after February 17th. The Children's Television Act requires that licensees air educational programming for children and protect children from excessive and inappropriate commercial messaging. Our enforcement of this statute has been vigorous, with over $26 million in fines or consent decrees reached. The Commission released a report on the issue of excessively violent television programming and its impact on children. The report found that exposure to violence in the media can increase aggressive behavior in children, at least in the short term. The Commission offered several recommendations to Congress, including ways in which the industry could address violent programming, such as providing consumers greater choice in how they purchase their programming. The FCC, along with Senators Harkin and Brownback, convened the Joint Task Force on Media and Childhood Obesity to bring together government officials, media companies, advertisers, and the food and beverage industry to work on behalf of America's children. The task force succeeded in producing some significant voluntary commitments aimed at reducing the negative impact of the media on children's eating habits and increasing its positive influence on their behavior. The Commission has challenged cable and satellite operators to offer more cost-effective alternatives, encouraging them to make family-friendly programming packages available and to offer networks in a more a la carte manner. The Bureau's 2006 further report on packaging and sale of video programming services found that theme tiers and a la carte could provide consumers the opportunity to reduce their cable bills by purchasing fewer channels or smaller packages. Moreover, the Commission found that some type of a la carte option could prove better than today's bundling practices in fostering diverse programming responsive to consumer demand. The Commission took action to maintain the three long-standing core goals of Commission media ownership policy: competition, localism, and diversity. The Commission took significant steps to increase diversification of ownership in the broadcast services by promoting opportunities for new entrants. In addition, the Commission held an en banc hearing and conference on overcoming barriers to communications financing and has implemented some of the suggestions raised at the conference and is considering others. In addition, the Commission completed a long-standing initiative to study localism in broadcasting and made proposals to ensure that local stations air programming responsive to the needs of their service communities. As television stations transition from analog to digital, the Commission has a rich opportunity to foster the entry of many more new, independent, and diverse voices on the air. One idea that takes advantage of the potential for digital technology to serve a more diverse array of consumers is spectrum sharing. In the digital environment, the ability to share spectrum, rather than having to purchase new stations or spectrum, provides an entry-level opportunity for new entrants to cut some overhead costs and get into the business of broadcasting. We proposed allowing broadcasters to create more diverse and locally oriented channels by sharing their digital spectrum with entities offering such programming. ION Media Networks recently joined with a minority-owned new entrant in the television broadcasting industry, Urban Television, with a share time proposal that would launch the nation's first over-the-air African-American television network, if approved. The Bureau took action to foster the development of a vibrant terrestrial digital radio service by adopting service rules and other requirements for digital audio broadcasting. Digital audio broadcasting allows terrestrial radio to offer enhanced sound quality, improved reception, and new services such as datacasting and subscription services. The Bureau has authorized over 1,500 digital audio broadcast stations. We also took action to foster the development of low-power FM service. Low-power FM allows community groups and nonprofit organizations to enter into the world of broadcasting. The LPFM rules require licensees to be local and favor those applicants that pledge to originate significant amounts of locally originated programming. Thus, these stations are providing consumers with new and diverse local programming options. The Bureau has licensed 870 LPFM stations. Although I've covered some of the headline-grabbing actions of the Media Bureau in the last few years, I would be remiss if I did not mention the tremendous volume of work that is completed by the Bureau on a daily basis. This includes over 67,000 applications disposed, over 190 commission orders adopted, and over 2,000 responses to congressional inquiries made. Some of the hardest working public servants anywhere in the government reside in the Media Bureau, and I want to close by emphasizing my heartfelt gratitude to the amazing and extremely dedicated staff of the Bureau. And I also want to thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, for making these last few years, both in the Consumer Bureau and especially in the Media Bureau, so lively. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Kathy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight the accomplishments of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. First, I too would like to thank this entire CGB team, both here in DC as well as in Gettysburg, for their outstanding dedication and work performance. All of the accomplishments that I will describe today are the direct result of their hard work and professionalism of the nearly 200 committed civil servants in the Bureau. As I will describe, CGB serves as a public face of the Commission for the American consumer and assists in developing and implementing the Commission's consumer policies, including disabilities access. A significant portion of CGB's outreach efforts over the past few years has focused on the DTV transition. We have sought to reach the most vulnerable consumers, including seniors, people with disabilities, non-English speakers and minority groups, low-income consumers, and people living in rural and tribal areas. These efforts have produced results. Public awareness of the transition has grown significantly. As Nielsen found, between November of 2008 and December of 2008, the penetration of completely unready households in the United States declined by 0.6 of a percentage point, one of the largest drops since readiness status reporting began in May of 2008. Assisted by our colleagues in other bureaus and offices across the Commission, we have made over 11,000 visits across the country, including to over 5,800 senior centers, as well as community centers, libraries, and other community gathering places of the targeted outreach populations to distribute DTV awareness information and to help answer questions. As you know, our outreach efforts have been bolstered by the Commission's DTV Consumer Education Nationwide Outreach Program, an 82-market outreach tour focusing on markets with the highest percentage of over-the-air viewers, or the highest number of over-the-air viewers in the community. The next two tables illustrate the effectiveness of this DTV outreach effort, not only about the transition itself, but also where to go to get additional information on the transition. To date, the FCC's DTV.gov website has received over 67 million hits. We regularly update and enhance the DTV.gov website with additional features, information, and links. Also, based on the large increase in calls to our call center, we have nearly tripled our call center staff, adding over 100 additional contract staff, over half of whom are bilingual, as call takers to complement our current call center staffing. We also have extended the Monday through Friday call center hours until midnight Eastern Standard Time. And more recently, we extended the call center's operations even beyond midnight for the more expansive coverage required during the National Soft Test on Monday, January the 12th. Further, we are extending operation today in order to provide coverage for the Hawaii digital television transition. In addition, going forward, we are planning for and anticipating similar extended operation prior to and following the nationwide transition date. The Bureau has also worked in furtherance of the Commission's goal to protect consumers from harm. The initial do not call list of registrations were set to expire in June of 2008, which would have left millions of consumers without the protections they had come to rely on. The Commission adopted an order to make registrations with the do not call registry permanent. The registry has grown in popularity over the years, with more than 172 million telephone numbers now included on the list. In addition, the Bureau processed over 309,000 Telephone Consumer Protection Act complaints. Since March of 2005, we have also processed 7,334 slamming complaints and directed carriers to provide over $316,000 in credits and refunds to slammed consumers. The imposition of early termination fees on subscribers has emerged as a source of concern for many consumers. When the Commission's early termination fees proceeding was initiated, the nationwide wireless providers utilized a flat or fixed charge for early termination of the contract by the subscriber. More recently, AT&T, Sprint Nextel, T-Mobile, and Verizon Wireless announced that they were discontinuing the use of these flat or fixed ETFs and adopting an ETF that diminishes over the period of the contract. In June, the Commission held a public hearing that provided a forum for the various stakeholders and interested parties to discuss the complex issues relating to the use of early termination fees from both the industry and consumer perspectives. The Bureau's consumer centers in Washington and Gettysburg are the primary means by which CGB provides consumer support. From 2005 to 2008, the Consumer Center fielded over 9.1 million consumer contacts, including over 3 million just this past year. Notably, during this 4-year period, it included 4.3 million phone calls, 4 million emails, and 720,000 faxes, as well as webmail and web contacts from consumers. Another important role played by our Consumer Center staff is assisting in the mediation and resolution of complaints that consumers have with service providers. From 2005 to 2008, as a result of CGB staff efforts, more than $12.9 million were returned to consumers by service providers. In the area of disabilities access, the Bureau completed numerous items designed to bolster and expand the availability of telecommunications relay services. Most notably, the Commission adopted numbering and emergency call handling requirements for video relay service and IP relay service. Beginning on December 31st of 2008, VRS and IP relay consumers can obtain 10-digit telephone numbers that are the same as those used by voice telephone users. Today, a VRS or IP relay user can be reached over the telephone through his or her number as easily as anyone else. The new rules also require VRS and IP relay providers to automatically route emergency 911 calls to the appropriate emergency personnel. The Commission also extended the disabilities access requirements of Sections 225 and 255 of the Act to interconnected VoIP providers and to manufacturers of specially designed equipment used to provide those services. The Commission also addressed cost recovery methodologies for the various forms of telecommunications relay services and clarified the nature and extent that certain categories of costs are compensable from the TRS fund. Last year, the Commission also made it easier for consumers to raise concerns about their closed captioning experiences. For example, under the new rules, consumers may complain directly to the FCC. Further, the Commission required distributors to provide contact information to the Commission for posting on the Commission's website so that consumers could more readily reach them with closed captioning issues. The Commission also addressed captioning issues raised by the digital television transition and the use of converter boxes to ensure that consumers continue to benefit from closed captioning after the transition is completed. We continue to enhance the availability of Commission documents and access to Commission services for people with disabilities. During 2005 through 2008, we converted over 57,000 pages of print documents into accessible formats such as Braille, large print, and audio format. We also provided approximately 2,200 hours of sign language interpreting, CART, and revoicing services. CGB continues to work actively with Indian tribes on a government-to-government basis to ensure that tribes have adequate access to communications services. One of the Commission's primary vehicles for informing and educating consumers is through publications which are disseminated through our consumer centers or the Commission's website, as well as at events and conferences around the country. Over the last 4 years alone, the Bureau created or updated over 100 fact sheets, consumer advisories, and other publications. For example, we developed several fact sheets and advisories to assist consumers in emergency situations and to provide consumers information about broadband, the internet, and rural health care. Publications have also been a key component of our DTV outreach. We collaborated with disabilities community representatives to prepare and release consumer advisories specifically intended to address concerns and questions by people with disabilities concerning the DTV transition, including advisories providing information regarding video description, closed captioning, and the accessibility features of NTIA-approved digital to analog converter boxes. To further ensure access to DTV transition information by as many people as possible, we also translated the 6 most widely distributed DTV publications into 21 languages. To date, the FCC has distributed over 14 million pages of DTV transition information. We also have translated into Spanish all of our consumer fact sheets and have a special Spanish web portal. In conclusion, I am very proud of the Bureau's accomplishments and significant contributions toward the Commission's key strategic goals. Once again, I wish to thank everyone in the Bureau for his or her tireless efforts and hard work. CGB staff consistently rose to meet each challenge presented. I also applaud the Bureau's management team for their commitment and continued support. The contribution of every CGB team member is reflected in the Bureau's accomplishments I outlined today. And I wanted to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and each of the commissioners for the opportunity you gave me to lead this Bureau over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Chris?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. It is my privilege to present to you the accomplishments of the Enforcement Bureau under Chairman Martin's leadership. The Enforcement Bureau's mission is to investigate and respond to possible violations of the Communications Act and the Commission's rules and orders. A stepped-up enforcement approach under Chairman Martin has produced significant results over the past approximately 4 years, including over 7,100 enforcement actions, more than 12,600 inspections, the successful resolution of almost 850 cases of public safety and other interference, and over $151 million in proposed fines and forfeitures. Compliance with the Commission's rules governing the unauthorized provision of service or equipment, unauthorized transfers of control, and auction collusion promote the efficient use of the spectrum, thereby opening more spectrum for greater and new advanced services. The Bureau acted swiftly to enforce these rules, conducting more than 170 investigations, leading to over $41 million in proposed forfeitures or consent decrees. The Bureau has been very active on the DTV front to enforce rules in a number of areas: DTV labeling, DTV tuner, DTV consumer education, and VCHIP, all aimed at ensuring a successful transition to digital television. All told, the Bureau has conducted over 4,400 retailer labeling inspections, issued over 350 citations, and proposed fines or entered into consent decrees totaling over $13 million. The Bureau also has played an important and significant role with respect to DTV consumer outreach, in large measure through our 24 field offices across the country. To date, we have visited over 10,000 sites, including senior centers and libraries, and held or scheduled over 2,100 presentations throughout the United States. Ensuring the public safety is always an area of the highest priority for the Bureau. Under Chairman Martin's leadership, we issued notices of apparent liability and consent decrees for violations of the Commission's rules requiring wireless and VoIP E911 functionality, responded to almost 850 cases of interference to public safety communications and complaints of numerous false and harassing E911 calls to PSAPs from non-provisioned cell phones, and conducted over 8,200 inspections to ensure compliance with the emergency alert system, tower lighting, tower fencing, and radio frequency radiation rules. As a result of our work, we issued over $6.5 million in proposed penalties against companies that violated the Commission's public safety-related rules. In addition, Enforcement Bureau staff was heavily involved in Homeland Security efforts. Called out on more than 10 occasions to assist FEMA and state emergency communications personnel stemming from natural disasters, our field agents provided on-the-ground leadership and ongoing support to assess and resolve critical communications infrastructure needs. Their participation greatly helped to strengthen the nation's response plans. Under Chairman Martin, the Bureau took a strong stand on consumer protection. The Bureau aggressively pursued violations of the do not call, pre-recorded advertisement, and junk fax rules by issuing nearly 2,800 citations and assessing close to $20 million in proposed forfeitures. We also protected consumers' sensitive personal information, reviewing over 5,000 CP&I carrier compliance certifications, and proposed 25 forfeitures totaling over $2.1 million. For violations of these important rules. EB was also active in enforcing the broadcast, obscenity, profanity, and indecency rules. In an omnibus television order, we decided 48 separate cases, resolving more than 172,000 complaints and proposing $355,000 in forfeitures for indecent programs. In addition, we proposed forfeitures totaling more than $5 million for the airing of indecent content during episodes of Without a Trace, NYPD Blue, and Married by America, and affirmed the $550,000 forfeiture for the Super Bowl 38 halftime show. We also stepped up enforcement of the sponsorship identification or payola rules by entering into consent decrees with strong compliance plans and voluntary contributions totaling $12.5 million. Relatedly, we issued NALs for improper use of video news releases. And finally, in the area of consumer protection, we proposed forfeitures of $67,500 against cable providers for reducing service without reducing rates. In short, the Enforcement Bureau under your tenure, Chairman Martin, has a long list of many accomplishments. I'm honored to be a part of the Bureau and to call the dedicated and talented staff of the Bureau and the managers my colleagues. I thank each of them for their hard work. Together, we look forward to continuing to serve the public by aggressively enforcing the communications laws and the Commission's rules. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Kathy, Monica, and Helen for all of your presentations. And I'll have a few more words in a second. Commissioner Cox?
Well, thanks to the four chiefs this time for your presentations. They were very informative. I think it's great that we all have the opportunity to better appreciate on a day-to-day basis what's going on in this place. And we're talking about tens of thousands of licenses and hundreds of thousands of applications and complaints and all that. It just gives you a feel for the hard work and the dedicated efforts that characterize the Commission. And it's good to get a better understanding of how we are interacting, thanks to the International Bureau, with the rest of the world, and Consumer and Government Affairs with the consumers who own the airwaves. We try to exercise good stewardship over and how we maintain the integrity of our laws and the credibility of our rules through the hard work of the Enforcement Bureau. Monica, I am trying to do my part to keep things lively in the Media Bureau. I think maybe we'll get even livelier in the weeks and months ahead. I hope so. This particularly as regards the localism and the diversity and competition that we talked about, and the importance of the media's role in maintaining our civic dialogue on which America's democracy rests. This year has been increasingly about digital television. I just returned from town hall meetings this week in both Detroit, Michigan, and Bristol, Virginia. I continue to be deeply concerned about the state of our preparations for the DTV transition. We are nowhere near as ready as we could be and should be at this late date. At this point, the question is not whether there's going to be significant disruption, but how widespread that disruption is going to be and how quickly we can move to restore service to those who may lose it. I am pleased that we adopted the analog nightlight order earlier this morning, because it's going to provide crucial information to consumers who are unprepared for the transition and would otherwise wake up on February 18th, not just to snow outside their houses, but maybe snow or nothing on their TV screens inside their houses. And I also want to again express our appreciation to the originators of the legislation that made this possible, Senator Rockefeller and Congresswoman Capps. And I want to applaud the chairman of the Bureau for expediting the processing of this order and allowing us to get that done today. But there are many, many other problems still confronting us, from the broken coupon program to reception issues to call centers. You know, we talked about 2.2 million calls coming in the course of a year. But think about 2.2 million calls coming in a couple of days, and it gives you an idea of the magnitude of the problem that we ought to be preparing for, and that is conceivable. So I wish we were a little farther along in putting the final pieces of the puzzle together and fitting them together. But that's a discussion for another day. What I do want to emphasize here is there have been extraordinary efforts on the part of the staff of your bureau and all the bureaus and volunteers stepping up to the plate on DTV. And I've been out in the field with a lot of these folks, and they are working so hard to establish contacts. They're doing everything that's been asked of them, and I think are reflecting really well on the commission. And I applaud their sense of public service, and I hope we can step up and give them the equipment and the tools and the time that they need to get this job done, so we can have a more seamless transition than the one it appears we may now have. I'm glad to see we made some progress on the early termination fees, but I got to tell you, they're not gone yet. My youngest son's cell phone died this week, and he's got to have that because he's out job hunting and socializing and doing all this other stuff, and he's like an alien, disoriented human being right now without his wireless phone. But he thought, gee, I'd like to, as long as the phone's dead, I might as well upgrade and get a better phone. He's willing to pay for it, so he goes to the store yesterday, and they say, you know, if you want to upgrade that phone, that means you got to get out of the plan you're in, and that'll cost you $135 or $150, whatever it is, and then you get a new plan, and then you get the phone you want. So I hope we can continue to move against that. But thank you all for your presentations. And I see Matthew sitting over here, sitting through all of this, and we ought to single him out because he gets involved in all of this stuff that's going on and tries to keep us on the straight and narrow, which is sometimes one heck of a challenge. And we thank him for his efforts day in and day out.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Gunn. Commissioner Ellison.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Helen, for your presentation. I think of you with the earlier panel, and the rest of these folks, I think about DTV, all the field operations that from all three of you that have helped us as we go on the road. But Helen, what you do is so important, and you've had a big year of very diligent work you and your staff have done with a lot of accomplishments this year as you recounted them. I'm especially pleased that we were able to increase the amount of spectrum for CDMA operators of MSS systems so they can provide ATC service. It's what I first began with at the Commission, and I was glad we made some progress. That'll help them offer advanced wireless services and really help, I think, in rural areas as well. So I appreciate the work you've done on, we saw how many non-routine earth station applications you processed. It's certainly obvious that satellite facilities provide another platform for broadband services, and they're really well situated for rural areas. So thanks for all that you've done to keep the trains moving on time down there. Finally, I know just yesterday we began our implementation of the 2011 World Radio Conference, the work, and I look forward to working with you and the Bureau on that in the coming year. And as far as ETV and the Media Bureau, lively indeed, I would say. and I think it will be continued liveliness is the forecast. At the Media Bureau, I certainly appreciate all the work you've done and the Bureau has done over the last years. You've had to work so many late nights and mornings, weekends. It's been incredible with all the work. In addition to the DTV issue, you certainly deserve our thanks for that and all of your staff. We made some progress in promoting competition. I think there's a lot more to be done. We at least addressed some of these issues in the context of the media ownership order, and we started a good effort on that, and we have a lot more to do. On DTV,